Hi, everyone. This is Bob Ost. This is Theater Resources Unlimited. This is our monthly panel. We've actually been doing a lot of what seem like panels or discussions or conversations every Friday. We've been doing Friday conversations since April 17th, 2020. We've done 66 of them. But we continue to do our monthly panels. Our monthly panels are a little bit more of an in-depth look at topics that I think are relevant to most of us, if not all of us. And it's an opportunity to, it's also an opportunity to start a little later, because on Fridays we start at 4:30, but this one we're starting at 6 o'clock. So it's like a grown-up panel. It's an evening panel. And I've got some amazing people here. I'm on a bit of a mission right now. I see that we're heading towards reopening of live theater. Even though we've hit a little bit of a glitch with the Delta variant and things are a little bit less certain than they have been before, we still are thinking ahead, and we're still thinking about getting back into live theater. And I've decided that it's important for TRU to support the return to theater of the wealth of not-for-profit theater companies, small theater companies that we have in the city. Small to medium theater companies. And I'm doing a whole series of discussions and conversations with different theater companies. And we're also this is all heading towards what I hope will be a town hall open discussion on August 26th with as many theater companies as want to join us. It'll be free for all of you out there if you have a theater company, not-for-profit or not, it doesn't matter, but we're focusing on the needs of not-for-profits and fiscally sponsored companies, but it's just as important to offer support to any producing company that wants to make theater happen and wants to get back into live theater. I don't know that we're going to have any answers on August 26th, but we're going to have conversation, and we're going to be able to talk with everybody and find out what the challenges are, what the goals are, what we can do. And tonight I have four I think they're very successful theater companies that have been around and established for quite a while. And I want you to meet them all. These are my guests. Oops. I'm going to just, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves briefly, your name, what you do besides running your theater companies, and how long you've been with the theater company. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the companies. So I want to start with Deborah Ann Bird, who I met at a benefit for a mosque downstairs at Best Bank Cafe many years ago. And I'm so glad for that meeting. I value you very highly, Deborah. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Bob. I'm glad that I got to meet you back then as well. Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Ann Bird. I'm the founder and producing artistic director of Take Wing and Soar Productions and the Harlem Shakespeare Festival. Harlem Shakespeare is, I think this is season 19. And we are in residence with New Heritage Theater Group in Harlem. And was there anything else I was supposed to add? Oh, and the other than being a producing artistic director, I'm also an actress and playwright, and I'm currently kind of floating around on tour with my new show, Becoming Othello, A Black Girl's Journey.
And just so everybody will understand what that means, Deborah Ann has played Othello.
Yes, I played Othello 3 times, and I since wrote a solo show about what happens when a girl plays a man and what happens when a young Black actor becomes a classically trained actor, and what happens in the American world of classical theater when that happens. So the story is about that.
So we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about your companies and about your mission and why you've been doing what you've been doing for, you said 19 years?
Years, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Francis, who is also a founder of a theater company, Urban Stages. Francis Hill.
Thank you, Bob. It's delightful to be here on your program, and I just think it's marvelous to have all these people here that are interested in theater. it's exciting. I founded Urban Stages about 36 years ago, and
She's got you beat, Deborah. 36.
Yes.
I beat
She's a
you.
mentor.
Yeah, I don't know, but listen, I've loved what Deborah does up at Harlem. I've had several friends of mine in her performing shows up there. And they're wonderful.
Francis, I think you need to go a little closer to your mic.
Can't
A theater, but I'll take a look.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to mute people. Somebody's talking over. All right, I don't see anybody else that can be. Okay, we're back. Hello.
So, right, I will say that Urban Stages is open. In fact, we have a show tonight on our stage at 7:30. It's been a great experience having people in the theater and having this show called Charmed Life, from soul singing to opera star.
And you have been a playwright as well.
Right.
Your background is as a playwright, and you actually started Urban Stages started as it was actually called something else, and it produced a play of yours.
Yeah, it's called Playwrights Preview Productions, and it was a lot to say. And then
Playwrights Preview Productions.
Yeah, and then we started doing our outreach program, was called Urban Stages, and we had a big outreach program in libraries and all. I said, "What stupid? Why don't we just call it Urban Stages? That's so much easier, and that's who we are, Urban Stages." So there, that's it.
And again, I'm gonna go to Ralph. I'm gonna come to you last, Chad, because the story of the evolution of your involvement with Abington is a little bit more complicated, I would say. And the story of Abington is complicated. But Ralph, you were there at the beginning of Peculiar Works. You are the peculiar in Peculiar Works.
Yeah, I guess we're somewhere in the middle. We've been doing this for about 28 years now, I think. It's really, we were three actors who got together and decided we wanted to take more control of our own work. So really, Peculiar Works is just Catherine Porter, Barry Rowell, and myself, and we do everything. I'm a theater maker, primarily a director, but I also write and act and produce and clean bathrooms and run the concession stand. Do all that. Yeah, that's producing, man. And Peculiar Works basically does site-specific performance, which basically just means we do theater, but not in theaters. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's basically what we've been doing.
And I also want to say that back when Cheryl Davis and I started TRU, Theater Resources Unlimited, 28 years ago, one of the first things Cheryl said to me is, "I got this friend, Ralph Lewis, who has this company, Peculiar Works Theater. Can he come to the meeting?" So you've been with us since almost the beginning. Yeah. If not the first meeting, probably the second.
The second meeting, I think, actually, after you guys had the first one, Cheryl told us all about it and invited the three of us to attend. And we just love what TRU does, and it's such a vital organization. And I don't know, Bob, if you meant to dedicate your life to this, but
no, I didn't.
You've been so important to us, so thank you for everything.
Thank you. And am I right, Chad, in saying that Catherine Porter from Peculiar Works Theater was in a show that you were in? Wasn't she in Breeders with you?
I believe so, but if not, please send her my love, because I know she's also part of Toso's theater company, which I did multiple things for them.
Well, I happen to know that it was. I happen to know that it's true because Catherine and Chad were in a play of mine at Toso's. So I know Chad from when he actually blew my mind by doing a role that I had written exactly as I had envisioned it. No one had ever done it as perfectly as he had done it, and it was memorable for me, Chad. I keep saying this. I keep rubbing your nose in it.
In the 20 years ago part, it was the 20 years ago part.
so fast forward, and can you tell us a little bit about the history of Abington and how you eventually came on board to try to lead it into the new world that we're in?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Bob, for always welcoming me and for this evening, and really pleasure to meet you guys. I look up to your companies and have seen, multiple productions across the board. So thank you. So I joined Abingdon in 2016 as the Associate Artistic Director under Tony Speciale, and then took over as Artistic Director in 2018 when there were some changes. And we are going into our 29th season, producing all brand new American playwrights for the past 28 something years. And then I'm sort of trying to get us away into a world where we're open to all possibilities. But again, our mission is all about emerging playwrights. And I like to say emerging artists in general.
And the interesting thing about, to me, about the history of Abington is Abington at one point had a home theater, had a space. Everybody may remember the Abington Theatre from 312 West 36th Street, I think.
Which is now the Tank.
Which is now the Tank.
Yes.
And what was it like transitioning? First of all, what happened to the theater? I mean, give us the honest lowdown on what happened and how you have come in and tried to give a new direction to the company.
Yeah, the honest slowdown was that change was actually made before I was artistic director, but really it was to open up and have more opportunity to choose theaters and productions and be able to choose the space that fit for the actual production. On top of that, they really Abingdon had been billing themselves as an off-Broadway theater company when that house is actually not an off-Broadway house. So, I think the idea was to really upgrade some of those contracts and move to larger contracts and larger houses. So, people ask me that question all the time. Do you wish you still had the space? And it depends on which day you ask me. Because when I want to do a great reading or there's a new piece that I just want to go work on, I really miss the space. Running the space, particularly now, really grateful that we're not in that space. At the same time, we wouldn't have been able to produce Eve Ensler's original work in that space because she would have wanted a bigger space. And we produced that, the Fruit Trilogy in 2017, making the New York premiere and off-Broadway premiere of Eve's most recent play at the Lucille Lortel. So, a lot of that's the true answer, Bob, is that it was all about change and growth, really. It was really about growing into larger spaces. Interesting enough, I'm going to sort of put it back in a smaller space when we come back to producing, which will be in April of 2022. We're coming back to our live performances, and we're actually going to Theater Row, which I didn't know, but one of the founding members of Abingdon is still a board member. And she said that the old Theater Row was one of the first places Abingdon produced. So it's a little full circle moment, and I'm happy about that choice.
So to put this into a context, one of many things I want to look at tonight is how a company, what the advantages and disadvantages are of having your own space. And because Francis, I'm going to turn to you in a second. You're going to talk about your space that you now have. I don't think you always had a space, though. We're going to talk about other things as well. But Francis, can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of urban stages and
we've had our space for about 20 years. So
is this the one around the corner for me?
Yeah, it's 30 West
29th. 30th, yeah.
30th Street, between 7 and 8. We actually love it. What we've discovered as the place evolved was that it has fantastic sound. The acoustics are amazing. So we've sort of graduated into doing some musicals and doing plays with music. We love the space, and I think it's great though to move and to have a look at where you want to produce and what have you. We also have a huge outreach program in libraries and all over New York. So we do travel.
Well, the advantage, of course, I've been talking about this for years with theater companies. The advantage of having a space is your audience knows where to find you. The disadvantage is that you have to sort of divide your time between producing and being a landlord. You have to take care of the space.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have some good people that work for us and work with us, so that's been very handy. But it's always, improving it and painting it and doing this and that and this other thing. And then it's dealing with renters, because we do rent our space and we're delighted to have renters, and we always like to help them produce their shows too. I mean, a lot of young theater groups come in and say, well, how do we do this? And Urban Stages is there to help. So I look, if the day comes when we don't have a space, that'll be another challenge.
Basically, it's another way of doing business. One of the overview of all of these panels that I'm doing is what are effective ways of doing business? What are effective business models for companies? What are the things that you think help you to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, and what are the things that get in the way, and would you want to do things differently? I mean, all of that I want to look at tonight and in other discussions I'm going to have in the future. So
non-for-profit is interesting.
What?
The word non-for-profit is always interesting, because
Well,
I think we don't have to, you have to have a good board, you have to have good supporters, you have to have good funding, you have to have good grants.
I was going to go to the structure. I'm going to go to that in a moment. I want to complete this conversation because Deborah Ann, how do you find your spaces, and have you ever well? Let's first of all talk about what's the difference between Take Wing and Soar and Harlem Shakespeare Festival.
Well, we started out as Take Wing and Soar Productions.
Which is great because the initials are TWAS, TWAS.
Was like 'twas the night before Christmas.
Yes.
But Take Wing and Soar Productions was founded to help assist and foster what for women and youth and classically trained actors of color. We were formed to give classically trained actors of color center stage opportunities in classical plays and works by other traditionally classical authors. Actors graduating with BFAs and MFAs. We were targeting them specifically, people of African, Hispanic, and Asian descent, knowing that there were not a lot of opportunities, and then a lot of us being told that perhaps we shouldn't be doing the classics because we're not going to have any kind of real career. So we felt that it was really necessary to form Take Wing and Soar Productions. And about 10 years in, understanding that producing theater year round was proving a really big challenge. And so I said, well, how do we continue to keep working and continue our mission while being able to get some rest, some time? So I envisioned a 3-month summer fall festival where we would be able to do indoor show, outdoor show, family picnic, stage reading, Shakespeare on film, Shakespeare in the open air. And it's been working out. Of course, COVID shut everything down. And then me being an actor person who was not really intended to be an artistic director, my acting wings needed to spread. And so
Deborah Ann,
I've been on a little bit of hiatus.
You have been an admirable leader of your company. If not you,
I've been really working hard.
If not you, who? It's.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And so we've done whatever we can to make sure that these artists that we represent get whatever they need if they, and so that's been beautiful. And now we're in residence for the last, I think I've been working with Vosa Rivers for many years now, but even now, the Harlem Shakespeare Festival was formed in 2013. And it is the same. We have the same kind of mission, the same everything. It's just that our name is shifted. And when you look at our name, you're very clear about what we are and what we do. We do Shakespeare in Harlem, and it's a festival. But now it's also global, in that people ask us to come and work with them in France, in the UK, Bahamas, Prague. So that's what's happening with Harlem Shakes. And right now we're on a little bit of hiatus as me, the leader girl, is now a playwright, and I perform a solo show. So we'll come back in summer 2022. That's the plan. to come back summer 2022 with a full season for Harlem Shakes. Last year, everything was virtual. And then we'll see what happens in the world with us for next season.
Okay. Now, Ralph, you've never had any ambition to have a theater space or a home space. And talk about being hard to find for audiences to find. You could be anywhere. So talk a little bit about your model, about how you work as a site-specific theater company.
Well, yeah, that is one of our challenges is, having people find us. So of course we sort of contextualize our work as a bit of a treasure hunt and, try to find people that like to go, not just to see unique plays and performances, but also who like to go to unique places or architecturally unique sites. So we do have to sort of find our kind of audience. But I mean, I think that's something certainly we're a challenge we're open to taking. I don't know. I might get bored if I were in the same space for every production that I did. But I don't know, sometimes I lay in bed and dream, oh, I just wish I had a regular space to go to and didn't have to start this old site search again. So, but I do think with, the direction that we're heading, I think we're going to see more al fresco performance than we've ever seen. I think there's going to be a lot of theaters that are going to be going outside of their theaters to do shows. So, I mean, this could be a good thing for us.
Well, tell us a little bit about the process, because a lot of us don't really know what goes into finding a space that is actually you can actually use as a site-specific space. Not every space is there for the picking.
Yeah. And a lot of people say, oh, well, we'll just do a show outdoors and won't that be easier? And actually, quite often it's a lot harder because, one thing I dream about having is a lighting grid. We're always getting stanchions and poles and mounting things and finding, the technical aspects of what we do are a lot different than they are inside of a theater. But, in the beginning, we just used to like walk by spaces and say, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if an opera singer was up there and colored lights were, and so we would put that space on our list. Now we're at the point where we have lists upon lists of landmark spaces, burned out garages or basement spaces. And so, depending on what project comes up for us, then we think about like, well, where would it be really cool to see this piece take place in? We have also found spaces.
So it's an artistic.
Hey,
it is an artistic decision. It becomes an artistic decision.
Yeah, and sometimes it goes one way, and sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes we find the work first, then the site. Sometimes we find the site first, and then the work.
I'm sitting here thinking that I at some point in the future I'm going to put together a panel with you, Hamilton Clancy, and Ann Hamburger.
Yeah.
So we'll talk. We'll go do a deep dive into all that.
Yeah.
So let's go to the basic structure. Let's go back to what Francis was starting to say about what does it mean to be a not-for-profit theater company. First of all, let's dispel the myth that it means that you can't have a profit. It just means that any money that you make, has to go back into your company. But beyond that, anybody want to take on defining how you decided to become a not-for-profit and what it is that it goes into a not-for-profit that is right for what you're doing?
Mhm.
I remember when we first started, this friend of mine, we did it together. We said we wanted to produce a couple of plays, and we actually went to the Hartley House, and that was where our first theater was for about 3 years.
46th Street? Is that 46th Street?
46th Street. And what we did, I said, well, let's just write to some people and tell them that we're doing this and see if they'd like to contribute. It was putting known playwrights with unknown playwrights together and in a season of shows, like one act or whatever. And these checks kept coming in. And I thought, this is a pretty good idea to be nonprofit and be able to ask for money, and it comes. But Of course, that was being very unsophisticated.
Well, wait, let's clarify that because basically people can ask for money even if they're not-for-profit, but the money becomes either a gift or a donation. So for not-for-profit, it's basically you have a status. When you were writing these letters and asking for this money, you were a 501c3 at that point?
No, we were doing it through an organization. I've forgotten what it was.
A fiscal sponsor.
Yeah,
So let me just tell the room and whoever doesn't know, a not-for-profit theater company has to apply for a 501c3 status through the government, and you can do it on your own, but most of us, I think, at least have a lawyer helping us do it because it's really a bother to go through the process on your own. So if you get that status, then there's a few things that happen in terms of your company status. You have to be a corporation, first of all. You have to incorporate yourself, and you have to make sure that the name that you choose is available. So there's all these steps. If you want to produce and take donations from people and give them a tax-deductible donation, which is one of the reasons why we use not-for-profit status. That means that somebody who gives us money can take it off their taxes as being a charitable contribution. Mm-hmm. So if you want to do theater and you're not ready to go through the rigorous process of applying for a 501c3, and trust me, it's rigorous. I mean, it's a lot of work involved. You can find a fiscal sponsor. So fiscal sponsors, and TRU is a fiscal sponsor. Fractured Atlas has sponsored people in the past. I think they still do. The Field has done it. There are various places that do this. You can use their not-for-profit status, and you qualify you function as a not-for-profit theater company at that point. So let's talk about anything. What do you want to talk about? So you had a 501c3. You were soliciting donations, and it was being successful for you. Just so you know, Francis, it doesn't work that way for everyone.
Well, you have to also think of what you're asking for. So then what we went into was doing a lot of outreach programs. Suddenly I realized, hey, wait a minute, these libraries need, we found there was a need in the public library system to take readings to the libraries. And we were invited into Queens, we were invited into the Bronx, we were invited into these various libraries. And now we have done about 200 and some odd shows a year in these libraries. So that's a very good thing to ask for corporations and various people to ask for that. So you have to think of what you're doing and how you're helping society through your work.
Let's go through the other companies, and you answer the same question. What made you decide that 501c3 was the way to go, and what was your process in terms? Well, Chad, you're not going to know this because
I won't know exactly, but I will piggyback on that conversation by just saying I am asked often by some newer board members occasionally, like when we're doing free readings or workshops or something, anything in that world, and they say, why can't we sell tickets to this? Why can't we do this? And I go, this is the only thing that makes us different from, Bob and John over here that want to just make their own theater company. The services that we provide to the community, we do free readings, we do workshops, we do artists in residence stipends. So it's a support of the artists that, for me, that make that, valuable for the nonprofit status. That's the only thing that really makes a difference, because we're still charging tickets for our theater productions, as I'm sure everybody else is. But we provide, I don't know a lot of places, larger theater companies, houses that have been around that do free readings. I really don't see them that often, unless it's something that's driven by, we're looking for this to be, come into your theater company. And these readings are done just free to the public so that we can provide that service.
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes, we do the same thing. Free readings, free and low cost readings, subsidized tickets to main stages, just looking to see how we can best support people in our community who may or may not be able to afford full price ticket. Also, because the classics are kind of like new plays to some of our audience members, we needed to get them acclimated to hearing this kind of text. And so the reading series proved to be a really good way to be able to do that, economically feasible, and also give the actors an opportunity to practice their craft by being able to say these words. They have to audition, they have to still go into a short rehearsal and still go through the table reads and all of that. So we found that it was a way for our artists to support our artists by just being able to give them opportunities to practice their craft and hone their skills. And so part of our mission, these not-for-profits are mission driven. And so whatever our mission is, it becomes really great that we can use our not-for-profit status to be able to assist these the people who we were founded to serve. Also, being a not-for-profit organization comes in very handy when you need to get government assistance, government grants, whether they're local, whether they're city council, whether they're state or federal. You have to have a not-for-profit status to get those grants, and also to get items from like Microsoft and other corporations that will give donations to not-for-profits. And so I thought about a lot of that when I was thinking about founding Take Wing and Soar. How do I get support for these classically trained artists of color and women producers and women designers? How do I get support? And I figured that the best way to probably get support would be to figure out how go the not-for-profit route. Of course, there's a lot of work involved, not just the setting up of the thing, but every year you have to start all over again and find the money and make sure you got the venues down and make sure you hire the people. It's a challenge to be able to do it over and over again, but we form communities that way.
We basically compare it to Sisyphus. It's
To who?
basically Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill that rolls back down
but
every
sometimes
year.
it's fun rolling a rock up the hill, especially if we can, these not-for-profits
Go to sleep.
collaborate, because then the rock's not so heavy.
So, Ralph, I'm going to come back and I'm going to fill in a few blanks about what we're talking about here. But Ralph, your relationship to not-for-profit, how did you figure out that 501c3 was the way for your company to go? And did you apply right away, or did it take a couple of seasons before you went, wait, there's another way of doing this?
Actually, I guess we incorporated in 93 and we got our own 501c in 96 or 97. So we worked with a couple of different fiscal conduits in the beginning, including the field. We were never going to get like investors and pay a dividend or anything like that. So going for profit was never really an option for us. But boy, listening to the other people talk, it does make me think about the title of the Building Back Better concept, because boy, it really does seem like it's going to be different depending on whether you're a not-for-profit or a for-profit, whether you're an organization with a mortgage and a large theater, or whether you're, an independent theater company that goes from place to place. Really building back better is going to mean different things for all of us. But I feel like the for-profit, the Broadways, I think they're going to be the last to come back. And it's us not-for-profits that are more flexible, who are probably going to be coming back sooner than a production that needs 80% capacity to cover their running costs.
Absolutely, I think you're right. I do think you're right. We're going to get to building back better, because I wanted to basically set the frameworks first, and then talk about. One of the questions I'm going to. You can start thinking about it. Are you going to be doing anything different? Are you starting to do anything different than you've done in the past? So that's coming up. But for now, I want to stay with the not-for-profit structure and the reasons for being not-for-profit. I want to make sure that everybody in the room understands that the basic community element of a not-for-profit can be as simple as providing art to people. Just, I mean, they're if your ticket prices is affordable, and you have an audience that you want to do your art for, you can still be a not-for-profit. The programs that Deborah and Chad and Francis are all talking about are things that can come into the picture at the beginning, or that they can things that you can evolve to. You don't necessarily have to start there. I know a lot of people starting theater companies just want to put on a show, and they just want to figure out how to do that. And I know a lot of them may not know whether to apply for not-for-profit status. So let me just say right away that until you're sure that your company is going to be sustainable, and that your company is going to be around for a couple of years, and that you're going to do year after year of producing, you may not want to be a 501c3. 501c3 implies a commitment in many ways. One of them is you're committing to the future. 501c3, you don't want to just randomly become one. You're going to be producing 2 or 3 shows every year for the next couple years, 10 years, 20 years, depending on how far your vision goes into the future. So let's talk about the structure of your company. There are companies. See, I don't really know. I know about each of you, but there are companies where one person does it all, and I'd like to see those companies grow to the point where there are other people that also do something that makes the company thrive and survive. But Deborah Ann, did you start off as like do it yourself, or did you have people? Did you
I
have
had a
people?
few people.
Okay.
I intended, because I knew I was going to have, I wanted to go straight up. Let's just do it, and we went right for not-for-profit. And so I got 4 women from the community to be my board members, but also to be that help, to also be working board members.
Right.
And then I also had a partner who was going to work on the managing part, and I was going to work on the artistic part. And so there was at least 6 of us really just trying to figure out, how do we begin this? How do we put this first one show up and then build it from there? And then, of course, you lose one partner there, and then you lose one board member, and you got to get another, and you have to replace the other one. You have to, and that becomes a challenge. It was extremely a challenge. My first goal was to, say, okay, if it's true that persons of color running classical theater companies, the longest running company was 3 years, and that was 1821. Then my first goal was 5 years. Let's do 5 years. And then we said, well, let's try 10. And then, on and on from there. But I started out very much with that group of women, but as their lives started to happen, and families and husbands, and they had to go away, I found myself a whole lot of the time being solo. Even if when I had an associate artistic director, sometimes they were actors and they had to go off to Canada and work there, or they had to go into the regions and work there. So yeah, there are a lot of times when you are very, very solo. But when it's showtime, then you call in the troops, and then the volunteers show up, and everyone shows up to really help. But knowing that a theater company that is a not-for-profit really needs at least 5. You need a managing director, you need development director, you need artistic director, you need all of those people to work together to make sure that that thing is held up on all sides. Someone has to handle the numbers. Someone has to handle the art. Someone has to handle casting. Someone has to handle, once there's there, where's the company? What's happening with the whole company? And that becomes really heavy lifting when you are a solo founder and you don't necessarily have a real staff.
What I've
Like,
seen a lot of
yeah.
people that they have an artistic vision. They found a company, and they by default start doing the managing director's work as well, which is not a great idea, because there has to be, at some point, there needs to be a conversation between art and business. And it's hard to have that conversation in your own head. There may be people who can do it, but I think that it's really important to have a division of responsibility.
Absolutely. It's important to have all those folks. But in the absence of those folks, what becomes extremely important is that you get your knowledge. Go to that foundation center and get the knowledge so that even if you have people to do it, you know what those jobs are supposed to be, so you can be a better leader of your organization. It's really important to take all of those classes on board, all of those classes on development, all of those classes on marketing, all of those classes from Art New York. You have to take all of those just to understand how to run these companies effectively, and so that you give them a chance to be able to survive 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, because they won't survive if you don't have that kind of knowledge and understanding on what it means to effectively run a company. You need understanding and knowledge. Absolutely.
So just to summarize it briefly, what you're saying is that you had the original goal of having a division of responsibility. Ultimately, what happens occasionally is that everything falls on your lap because people aren't necessarily able to take on the job that they were supposed to be taking on.
Absolutely,
So it
especially
happens.
if you don't have all of the money that you need to fall into the pot, because some people can volunteer, but others after a while, they're like, I need a check. And so that's when it starts to fall on your lap a little bit more. And you have to decide, am I going to close up gracefully? Or am I going to figure out how we together can raise the funds to make sure we have at least 3 employees to help hold this thing together? That becomes a really big challenge. And you have to decide, can we do this? Do we have enough support from the outside world to make this work? And if so, then you keep pushing. And if not, then you have to either merge with someone or you have to dissolve, one of the two.
Francis, did you start by yourself? Did you have a team?
No, I had somebody start with me. However, just as Deborah Ann says, something happens in their life and then somebody else comes in and it evolves. I mean, not only the personnel evolves, but the visions evolve. Just as I think after COVID, our visions are going to evolve into different creativity. But you have to have a team. Otherwise, you go absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
If you're managing a fairly good size season. And I mean, it's fundraising, it's working on, it's development, it's reading plays, there are tons of things to do, and you have to find a team or volunteers. And Deborah Ann is right. After a while, you have to give people checks. I mean, it can't be volunteer. I mean, when we first started, we decided, we'll get all these actors and then they'll work and then we'll cast them. Well, then what happens, a play comes along and somebody gets very mad because they weren't cast in that play and they licked a lot of stamps and they didn't get the part. And so they disappear. And you feel very badly about that because you don't want to have, sort of have forced labor in your organization. So, I mean, I'm very glad at where Urban Stages is now because everybody gets paid and nobody is a volunteer. And everybody seems to be working for the same goal. And that's another thing that's important. The goal, the mission, the goal of the theater, the goal of the production, the goal of what's happening.
Yeah, we'll go back and look at missions again in a moment. Chad, I consider Abington a complicated story. Maybe
You seem to say that, Bob, but I'm not sure. I feel like you must know something I don't know.
Well, I know that it evolved with its original founders, and I know that at one point there had to be a succession, and it was a difficult period for them when they found a way to retire and have a succession. And I'm not sure that all of it was congenial. I don't know for sure, but I've heard things that sounded like it was problematic.
You see my smile, like I can only say so much.
Okay. So what I'm going to ask you is, what was the structure that you walked into But by the time you came in and started working, how was it set up at that point? I know that Abington had a lot of people working for them.
Absolutely.
At one point, when they had the theater space at 312 West 36th Street, they must have had five or more people that were.
Yeah, I think when I started, I believe I was the 6th employee that started, and I was only working part-time, and that was in the end of their 23rd season. And what I discovered, there was a lot of it was a broken system for many reasons, and people weren't being paid, people were being overworked, and all of the things that probably everyone has experienced. And I think there was a lot of agitation there through everyone. But and then as I stayed on with the company, I also saw that the company wasn't changing as the times were changing. So what I can say as far as structure is that when I took over as AD, I'd experienced all of those broken systems, including many of the things that I know you all have already faced. And first thing I said is that, none of the people that want to work in this theater company wanted to work at a 9-to-5 job their entire life. They didn't want to sit at a desk. They didn't want to answer phone. They didn't want to lick stamps, as you just said. They were artists for the most part, and they were looking for their side job. So I said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change this whole 9-to-5. You got to be sitting at the desk. So I really opened up a way to keep really valuable people on the team, with giving them flexibility to pursue their acting career, their directing career, as long as they were able to get the work done and be there for the company. Then I now had wonderful employees that were excited to put in the work, because I wasn't taking them away from also their dream. Because I know when I started, they put me in this little cubicle and said, sit there from 9 to 6. And it really wasn't a good environment for me as an artist. I wasn't even functioning well. So that's one thing structurally that I wanted to change, which has been very successful, including I also got rid of our offices in 2019, cut to now everyone is out of their offices. And I feel like we're going to see that if you did have an office, you may be looking at that and going, is that expense, is that an expense worthy of, $12,000, $15,000 a year? Do you need that office to run a theater company? So that's sort of my experience as the structure. It was a little broken. It was a little broken.
And when you talked about changing the 9 to 5 to flexible hours, that was pre-COVID. That was before the shutdown.
Pre-COVID, because I also, and we're seeing this a lot in the world right now, people were being overworked. I was working from 10 to 6 at an office and then going to the curtain at 7 o'clock and then staying till until midnight. That is never going to happen again in a professional theater company. And if it's happening in anyone's company, they're really going to get called out. I mean, Williamstown Festival was just, brutalized in the press over the last 2 weeks. So I don't think there's a world where you can even consider the possibilities of that kind of work environment any longer.
Ralph,
I
have a feeling that you guys are kind of loose.
Well, yeah, I just want to say I attended a Zoom yesterday that USITT did, the technical theater people, and the whole panel was about the end of the 8 out of 10s. And, I think a lot of that sort of the 2 weeks before the show opens, a lot of that is never going to be the same again. As Chad just said. So, but our company, we operate very differently, I think, than a lot of companies. We met as actors, where you were required to do something in order to be cast in a show. And I did grant writing. Catherine ran the box office. Barry produced the second stage. We were always hanging out with each other. So really, we learned a lot of those skills as actors at another company. And so when we took off on our own, you know, we knew a lot of that stuff. Arts Action Research, a consultant organization, gave us some good advice. They said, let the art lead the administration. So, you know, we always sort of filed papers, maybe a little later than other companies, but we did it when we had to, you know, when we had to officially organize, when we had to incorporate, when the fiscal conduits cut of our grant started being too large a figure, you know, as the company grew, it made us administrate rather than spending all of our time administrating just so we could do some show in the future. So that was very helpful to us. And the structure that we have is sort of a project leader structure. So we're all three creative artists, and we come up with a project. It's her project, his project, my project. And that person is the project leader. They come up with a budget for their project. They come up with the schedule for their project, and they present it to the other two people. And the other two sign on to that project. And then, you know, at least if this is your project, you know, you've got two other people to count on. And then we add other circles of support to each project in that way. But that's sort of, you know, how the project begins, is who is that project leader? And then they run the administration of the project as it's being created.
So I'm going to ask you, I don't know whether you're going to be comfortable with this question or not, everybody, but just so people have an idea of the size of your company, could you would you be willing to say what your annual budget was when you first started and what it's grown to now? Okay,
Yeah,
so
I was a baby org. I was a baby org. My very first year in 2003, I think we did like 20,000. That's what it was.
Just so you know, the first in the series of panels that I did were three companies that all are working still on budgets of under 30,000. And
when I started, that was the number, and
yeah.
and we've just you know, with partnerships, we just did 100,000, but that's you know, but I purposefully kept those numbers small so that, you know, once you hit a certain number, but now it's changed to 250,000, but once you hit a certain number, then all the categories start to change, and you need all these different, like CPAs, and you need a whole nother kind of thing once you get past a certain threshold.
Yeah, this
and
is an
knowing that we didn't have the kind of staff, we were just trying to keep that number down. But now we're ready to boom, take wing and soar as much as we can. But
it used to be,
we're still considered a small baby theater company, even though we're 20 years old.
Just so everybody in the room knows, when you reach the threshold, used to be, it's not anymore, it's raised, but it used to be $250,000. When you reach that threshold, then you're required an accountant review of your taxes, and that can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000. It costs a lot of money.
A lot of money. And Bob, I'm happy to tell you that when I joined Abingdon, we were still on 36th Street. The budget was around $750,000.
That's the bigger audit.
Yes, and then I'll go into my 29th season probably on a $300,000 budget.
Francis, can you talk about that with us?
Now, I can remember our first grant was $500, and we felt it was $1 million.
Yes.
When we first started. And I would say our first budget, maybe the first year, was maybe $10,000. And it's grown. And now, not COVID year, but we're around 700 to 800,000. That's sort of where we are. But
COVID has been very interesting for us. Basically, our total income for the year went down a certain percentage. I don't know what the percentage was, but our expenses went down a greater percentage. So our profit was actually higher. Our profit margin was actually higher during COVID. We weren't spending that much money. It's one of the reasons why probably going to keep doing a lot of this virtually, guys. it's working for us. And also, just I'll tell you the true story. But basically, when I first started, we had no budget because we're an arts service organization. We weren't producing stuff at that point. We were basically just providing services for people, and it was just we were running on donations. People would come to my apartment and put money in a bowl,
Jar.
and it was a jar. Yeah, it was the tip jar. So that's how we ran. But we eventually reached the point where we were suddenly a 25,000 or 30,000 a year company. It wasn't so sudden. I guess it happened slowly, but and that was the threshold that was hard. I think everybody knows that's a threshold that's hard to get past. You seem to get to 30,000, and it's like you got to work so hard to get past that 30,000 point. We're now at 150,000. If we were actively doing fiscal sponsorships, we'd be at about 250,000 right now. So Ralph, what's your story?
Well, when we started, we had zero budget till we did our first benefit, then all of a sudden, wow, we had a little money to spend. But, because we're a development company, I mean, we do everything from the concept to the strike. We'll have whole years where we don't mount a full production because we're in development. And those seasons can be 10 or 15K. The seasons where we have a major production, they could break 50K. But I think sort of on average, we're about a 30K company. It does seem like, though, that the big divide between independent theater companies are the ones that have mortgages and leases and the ones that don't, because there's a big gulf as to whether or not you have a monthly rent to pay. And we don't have that. And of course, a lot of times with the weird sites we're finding, we find a way to get it for free. And so we don't pay as much for space rental as a lot of companies do because we get that in kind.
Yeah, there's a lot of in kind in those numbers that which makes the number raised up. Like for many years we spent like 30,000. But our overall budget was like 150 when you add all the in-kind that we were able to get, like being in residence at the National Black Theater and then just getting donations from different corporate sponsors. The actual cost, if it was in dollars, would have been 150,000, but knowing that we had the support in the in-kind, we were able to just be able to spend like maybe 30,000 in cash from grants.
I'm also going to ask everybody, because this is in terms of planning for the future of your company. Do you all have a budget item for a leadership position?
Say that again.
Do you have a budget item for a leadership position? I mean, some companies don't pay their leader. I encourage people, if they can, to not. I don't tell you to pay yourself because just for the sake of paying yourself. It's basically to establish something that is permanent in your company that can be replaced, so you can be replaced in the future if you need to be. If there's no job there, if there's no salary there, then how does somebody succeed?
That's true. We
certainly do, Bob. We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're working on ours. We're absolutely working on it. I've been talking to a few people about what that looks like. And so we're in the process of making sure that happens really soon around getting that line item so that if and when Deborah Ann needs to, retire out of the position and even move on to do something else or what have you, that there's actually someone else who can actually come in and keep the company going. Absolutely, we're in talks
make
about
sure
that.
everybody understands it's not about paying Deborah Ann, it's about paying.
Right, because Deborah Ann's not on salary.
Yeah.
Deborah Ann's been a glorified volunteer for many years.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I did that too for about 20.
Yeah. But I know someone else coming in is not necessarily going to be that, because the company will mean something different to their artistic vision and their ability to hold it up. So we need to come up with a real number to really bring someone in who actually can do the job and actually will hold the company together. And we understand that very well.
Francis.
Yeah, my part is we've always been working on that. We have a line item for it. in our budget. But it is important to really, as far as the future of a company is concerned, you have to sort of be able to move in and move out, you know? It's
I
very-
mean, some people don't want the company to exist after they close it, and
That's great.
that's fine. I definitely want TRU to be structured enough so that I can leave and that somebody else can come in and run this.
Yes.
I didn't work at building this for 28 years just so that I could like close it and say goodbye.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about, we've covered this, but let's focus on it more a little bit. How things changed with COVID, how you made your pivot, and your thoughts about what. And again, some like Chad, you've said some things about this as well, but already. But what things could be? How can we build that back? It's basically what the title is. How can we build back better? What are the things that you think you've learned from COVID? One thing that we've all learned from COVID is flexibility, having to be able to adapt quickly, because nobody saw this coming, and it hit us whap right in the face, and we had to either like pass out from the punch or just get up and say, okay, this is how we're going to do this. What was the process for you, Chad? What was your process?
For COVID, you know, the pivot was I created our first ever fall festival of short plays. They were dedicated to BIPOC artists, BIPOC storytellers, BIPOC directors. We were able to bring 6 new playwrights and artists and directors, and partnered with the Educational Theater Foundation. So it was really, really thrilling for me. I love that. And we're actually going to keep that in the season coming up. And I hope that we continue that as long as I'm in charge. We certainly will keep that. So I think the lesson that I learned the most is, to be quite frank, I had some what seemed to be outlandish ideas, including even giving up the office, you know, or partnering with commercial producers. In 2019, right before COVID, I partnered with a commercial producer and produced the New York Times critic pick, Get on Your Knees. It was a huge success, but I tell you, that was not a good board meeting when I brought this up. It was not well received. So I think for me, I think that people are going to have to really move forward quickly. And I think that people are going to have to listen to, you know, out of the box ideas that may not fit in sort of this standard way that we have been producing. The same as someone was saying earlier, that they're doing Beau, you know, as a film before they're going to, you know, bring it to the stage. So I think that's what I'm actually excited for moving forward, Bob. I'm not sure I'm answering the full question here, but what I've learned, I guess, to sum that up, is that I really want to keep moving forward, out of the box, and change. We're changing the theater that we grew up in, that I grew up in as well in New York over the last 20 years. And as Ralph said, like, we're not going to be able to have these 8 out of 10s and volunteers and non-paid positions of artists any longer, including artistic leaders. You know, there was just a really wonderful article, I believe it was in the New Yorker, where they pulled ads from companies like ours, and they put the salary, and then they put below it the average cost of living in that area. And each, of course, was much lower. So I think, you know, that's promising that people are actually shining a light there, so that other people that support the arts actually understand that, you know, the people on this Zoom deserve a living from what they do and what they've mastered.
I'm going to have to sign off. I have a show in about 20 minutes and I have to go down in the rain 8 blocks. So I just will say in closing that this has been a great discussion, and I feel I've gotten to know a few more people in the business now, Chad and Ralph and Deborah, and what you do, which is great. And please let me know on my francis@urbanstages.org all that you're doing, and I will try to get there if I can.
Pleasure
Okay.
to meet you.
And but I just will say we went virtual immediately. We suddenly had a summer camp. Our summer camp went virtual. We had 8 summer camps. Someone was in France, someone was in Los Angeles, someone was here, and it was fantastic. It really worked well. We suddenly went, and our libraries went virtual immediately. We had our and everybody was paid. Our actors filmed what they were doing, and we went right into the websites of the libraries all around town. So I think what you're saying, Chad, is excellent. I think we all have to relook. How much are we going to keep it virtual? How much is it going to be live? I think, and it's kind of exciting. I mean, we were really excited because we all learned about how to film a reading on Zoom, past the glass this way and short things. And yet from my experience now in live theater, people clap, people are thrilled, people are glad. We are human beings that like to interact with each other visually and by our ears. So it's been a great experience having people in our small theater. And I just hope you all will continue with live theater and whatever you do. And I wish everybody success. And Bob, thank you for this.
Well, you're welcome, Francis. I just want everybody to know that you also, they've done adjustments to the theater and they've made it more COVID acceptable, and they're doing social distancing and everything. So,
Oh, you have to have your certificate of vaccination.
yeah. So there are adjustments going
Yeah,
forward.
and they're costly.
Yeah.
But our theater is adjusted, so that's great. We have the right kind of MERV 13 filters, and it's a whole deal. So thank you
Okay.
so much.
Break a leg tonight, Francis.
Bye,
Break-
bye,
yeah, break a leg.
Francis.
Anybody, we play through the weekend, and anybody wants to come and be my guest.
Indeed.
I'm planning on Saturday night if anybody wants to go with me.
Okay, great, love it.
That's to the room.
Bye, I'm leaving.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
I'm going to go with the same question to Ralph, which it doesn't. Sites. Did you do anything virtual? I mean, if you're a site-specific company, what did you do when there was a shutdown?
Actually, back in 1999, we did a production with video conferencing software, very much like Zoom. We had actors in New York at the Gertrude Stein Rep and actors at the LA Theater Center, and 2 cameras, 2 screens in both locations, and the actors were able to perform together. So it's not unusual for us to work with technology. A lot of our shows have projections in them and other sorts of technology. So it wasn't that hard for us, but we did start out slow. We really didn't know what to do, but I was very happy. I took a talk about early theater, and I got an organization to present it a year and a half ago, maybe. I don't know, a year ago. And I did it as a benefit for the Episcopal Actors Guild, and a touring company saw me do it there and picked it up. I did it last week for pay, and they've booked me for another gig in the fall. And so maybe I'll actually make some money off of that piece to go back into the company's coffers. But we also, we shot a movie last fall, a short film, and we're going to shoot another short film. So it's kind of like the COVID was like the lights coming on in a Lower East Side kitchen and all the roaches scatter. Some theater companies went into podcasting and are doing very well. Some went into alfresco theater. Some are doing films. Some are just waiting for live theater to get back. So there's a lot of different things that can be done. And we have been sort of dipping our toes into different sorts of waters. And we're planning a live performance for next month.
Oh, you are planning for it. Do you have a location picked out already?
Well,
Because I didn't get you to talk about this. I mean, what is the process when you find a place? You have to go to the city to get a license, or does it have to be licensed? Or
it depends on where. Barry has some monologues from the poet Diane de Prima. It's a show called Monuments. It was the last performance to be done at the Cafe Chino before it closed. And it's a series of monologues about actors and directors that Diane de Prima knew those days. So we're going to do them outside. We're talking to a cemetery. We're talking to the transportation department. We may do it in a park. We may do it in a street. So we're looking at some different sorts of sites, and we may do it like one weekend in one location, another weekend in another location, and see what happens with that.
So Deborah and Shad, what are you doing in terms of space? Are you projecting ahead for live performance and looking for spaces? Are the spaces that are waiting for you? What's the story for you guys?
Well, right now I'm very much been working a whole lot on becoming Othello, and I've also been like working with a lot of partners around the country, and so it depends on where we find ourselves in partnership. In Arizona, we've done the indoor performance with social distance spacing, COVID-friendly environment. In the Shakespeare and Company, we've done outdoor performances. It depends on where I am. Up in Maine, where the numbers are really low, we did indoor show just in June. I directed the agitators up there. And so it just depends on where we are. In October, we'll be in Indiana, that's indoors. And, so it's really going to depend on what part of the world we're in, which determines whether we're indoors or outdoors, whether we're masked or unmasked. All of that depends on the venues, not just in New York, but in different parts of the nation. That's pretty much what's going on.
Is all of this tied in with Harlem Shakespeare Festival? Or
it is. A lot of it is. When I directed the agitators, that was just me making my main stage directorial debut, but the show was indoors up in Maine. And Shakespeare and Company decided, Deborah Ann, we're going to help you to be an actor. So I was an actor up here, and that was outdoors. And I'm just watching different structures and how people are moving according to what the union rules are. The union has a whole lot to say about where actors can go, where they can be. Can they be indoors? Do they have specific kind of housing? What kind of utensils they can use? Can they not share? Can they, all these kinds of rules and regulations are going on within the union. And the expense of being able to meet those criterias, I'm understanding, are really big expenses. And so it's really going to depend if an organization has the funds to be able to put a show up. And we found ourselves partnering with a little bit of everyone. And so when Harlem Shakes goes out to partner with Arizona Southwest Shakespeare Company, or even the Folger, or even the Birthplace Trust, wherever we find our partnerships, we're able to afford to do the work that we do because we have partnerships and serious collaborations. New Heritage is going to partner with Harlem Week and Harlem Arts Alliance and Lincoln Center. Everyone is, finding out a way to, how do we partner together to continue to make live theater? And during COVID, we just said, okay, let's still reach out to our partners. And let's do a show with the National Arts Club. Let's do a show with the Harlem One Stop. And just to get those works out, still the same mission, still making sure that we serve our classically trained actors of color, but at the same time, figuring out how do we partner across institutions to be able to make these works still work, indeed. So we were able to do 6 to 8, I was able to do at least 6 to 8 different shows, but Harlem Shakes was able to do at least 5 shows, and we did them all virtually. And they were really good and a whole lot of fun. And most of them are still available to be seen.
how much of this, if any of it, do you think you'll be taking with you into the future? How has COVID changed your company? And if it hasn't, just say it hasn't. But
Well, we've always been flexible and ready to pivot at any given time, depending on, like I was saying, the how many staff members were available. I was always ready in my season to go ahead and do two main stages and three readings. But if that was not possible, my measure of success was not going to be on whether I was able to do that. The measure of success became, are we doing something to help classically trained actors of color? So one season, maybe we were only able to do 3 stage readings. Maybe we were able to do 1 main stage and 1 reading. Or whatever that was, the fact that we were able to do something became our measure of success, that we were able to help some people instead of none at all. And so when we're thinking about pivoting and changing, and when COVID came, well, how are we going to help these artists of color? How are we going to help build a world where it's totally inclusive? Because everyone on our stage is always multiracial. But how do we continue to do that in whatever genre presents itself? If now we have to move to Zoom, how do we make that work? And so pivoting is normal for us. We've learned how to pivot over the last 20 years. And so this was not so much of a challenge. Besides, it actually helped open us up more, because now we have to do global majority shows with Israel and South Africa and all these other places where we were able to reach to because of the medium of Zoom, or I forgot the other name of the other one, but we were able to reach even further.
StreamYard?
StreamYard,
Okay.
yeah. So, and using Zoom and StreamYard, we were able to really reach across the globe and reach classically trained actors of color everywhere and present something from a global outlook. And so that was really good that we were able to do that, even across the nation. Reach across the nation and get a director from California and an actor from here and there and there and there. And it was really wonderful.
So the
To
question
be able to do
for the
that.
future, though, and you may not have the answer yet, is whether you're going to continue to incorporate some of this Zoom technology so that
I
you
think
can
so. I think so, because what it does is it allows us to be able to reach places where we know our regular dollars wouldn't stretch.
Yep.
And if the mission is that important in the world, when we set out to change the face of American classical theater, that was really important. But if no one knows you, and if no one knows you in your little corner over here in New York or in Harlem, then how will they know? How will they be affected by being inspired to help make that kind of adjustment and that kind of change in their company or in their community? How do we positively affect others and help them to know that it's okay to have a mixed race cast on the stage when that is okay? It's usually okay most of the time, but how do we globally change everything so that we stop this thing of bigotry and hatred and racism? So it wasn't just COVID that was happening last year.
Oh,
As we
no.
all know, Black Lives Matter exploded. My telephone blew off the hook, especially being a classical girl who works with mostly white folk. Of course, my phone blew off the hook. And I had to up my leadership in another way, and not just for Harlem Shakespeare, but for our nation. Our nation was in big trouble. It's still a little wonky, but
A
understanding
little?
companies, I keep saying little because our numbers are small. But anyway, I knew and I understood that it was time to reach out nationwide to help us think differently, to help us stop hurting each other. The mission went from Harlem Shakes to national shakes because it became really important. Companies were ready to close down. Companies were ready to shut other companies down. When those documents came out, We See You, White American Theater, people were afraid and scared and challenged, and everything was really up in the air, and artistic directors were wanting to walk away. A lot of people lost their board members, they lost their executive directors, they lost their, and it's been a real shakeup. And so we were able to have those meetings, those panel discussions, those idea committee conversations, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access kind of meetings of heads of people who run Shakespeare companies, who run other classical theater companies, who run regular Black theater companies, because the angst was on all sides. And how do we love each other past the mess and get to what we all love, which is the theater itself? How do we continue to tell stories that help and heal and make people happy and sad and look at ourselves? How do we continue to do that? And so that became really strong and really necessary to happen last year. And a lot of us survived the storm, but a lot of us did not. And some of us are still hurting and in pain. And, you know, I'm one of those who are like, how do we fix that? Because we all just want peace. We all just want love. We don't want bickering and all of that. We want theater to be theater for everyone. And so I'm always here to let's make that happen. That's why I work with you, Bob Ost, because we trying to make theater wonderful for everyone, and we're on the same mission. We have the same tribe.
I'm adopting your phrase. How do we love each other past? How do we love each other past the mess?
Yeah, how do we love
I'm
each other
adopting that.
past the mess? Have conversations like this where we can all sit at the table and just be able to just talk and figure it out. Because at the end of the day, I've heard this so many times, we're more alike than we are different.
Amen.
And so through our stories and people coming to see theater at our theaters, we have the power to change how people think by showing them what is possible. And showing them what is possible on the stage is how I started out and how I intended. I said, you know, I can tell people to the blue in the face, classically trained actors of color really know what they're doing. They got their stuff together. But until I was able to mount it, put the money together and able to show you so that you sat in the house and you saw it, it was different when you experienced it yourself. And so how do we, as the leaders of these organizations?
If anybody doesn't understand it, they should see you do Lady Bracknell.
Lady Bracknell's the whole lot of fun, dear.
I know. Thank you for all of that. That was profoundly important stuff that you just said, and I'm grateful to you for saying it. I do want to complete with Chad and Ralph. The simple question is, what was your lesson from the past year and a half, and what will you be taking with you into the future? Let's do Ralph first, because I see Chad contemplating.
I think we've said the word flexibility several times, and we've put that in grants for years, and I think we're going to be testing that over the next season or two with our company. I think also another thing that's important for us is diversity on every different level. We are 3 straight white people, so we have always been thinking about diversity and meeting actors and designers that are outside of our realm. But I think also in funding, diversity is going to have to be grants. It's going to have to be getting our friends to give money. It's going to have to be fundraisers, a little bit here, a little bit there. I think in the type of work we do, diversity is going to be important. Sometimes it's going to be a solo show, and sometimes it's going to be a show with 30 or 40 performers. So, I think it's sort of those bold terms of flexibility and diversity that are going to be really important to what we do in the coming year.
Thanks, Ralph. Chad?
I touched on it a bit, Bob, but I really think it's what I've learned the most is to really stick to my own guns. And that was really challenging during this very difficult time, because I wanted to make changes. Some things just desperately needed to make change. But So I think what I learned the most and what I took with this the most is that I want this theater, my theater company and everyone's theater company, but I can only speak on mine, to be open to, you know, not only the diversity that is so valuable and needed and lacking, it's the voices, and how can the door be open? You know, how can we continue to get different voices on a board, different voices within the staff, different voices of the readings. And, you know, I really responded to the movement, because I realized, you know, I didn't have as much as I thought I did, and I am humble, hopefully enough to say that. And I was like, this is wonderful, because even just that virtual festival I made a change right away. And that change opened the door for 6 new playwrights, 6 new directors, over, I think it was 18 actors. And I don't want an award for that. All those people are going to be in my life now. So that's the change I think we have to make. And that's what like I said, that festival, as you guys must know, festivals they're not free, but we're giving away. That's a very expensive line item for my board to approve. And I'm so grateful for them for being aware of how important that work was, and giving me the go ahead to produce it again next year. And I'm so grateful for that. And that's what I think I learned the most, and to keep my ears and my eyes open to any opportunity that may come through. I try to value myself on answering almost every email that I ever receive. So someone's going to be listening and going, he didn't respond to my email. But I literally, and I remember this, and Bob, you mentioned I was an actor long ago. I mean, I remember being in those rooms and not getting a response from a message or a submission or a callback or something. And when I took over, I was like, I said, what I wouldn't do to be 20 years ago and be invited to all these readings and workshops, and I never got invited to nothing. And so I didn't even, so I value that. And I try to do really wonderful, I try to make sure that I hear artists, is what I'm trying to say. I try to make sure that if you write to me, if you take the time to send me your play, the least I can do is respond and say, thank you so much for sharing your work with me.
The lesson that I basically learned was that you have to be realistic about, excuse me, you have to be realistic about where you are in the moment. There was a tendency when we first went into this shutdown where people were in denial, and people were saying, oh, this is just, it's going to pass, it's going to pass, it's going to pass. Well, that is one way of responding to something like this. But the other way is to say, okay, this is where we are. Our world is different. We have to do things differently. And that was, I mean, it's a lesson that I've been taught many times in my lifetime. Believe me, I've been through many dramatic situations in my life. I think I just want to congratulate you guys. I want to congratulate all of us who are here. Whatever degree we were able to adjust and adapt and accept, that's the big word, accept the reality of where we are. We've all survived this, and I think we've learned valuable things. And I think we've come out, we're going to come out better for it. Many of us are already better for it. I think that the rest of the country will catch up eventually, and hopefully be a little bit better than they are right now, because there's some people that are not behaving very well. That's it for tonight, everyone. I want to thank you guys, Deborah, Chad, Ralph, friends of mine. People say, where do I get these great speakers? They're friends. I call a friend. They say, will you do a panel? So if anybody has anything that they want to raise with any of us before we close up, I do invite you. I know Ralph has to leave, but I do invite you to ask any questions if you have any.
Bob?
Yeah.
Bob? It's
Yes.
Bayor.
Hi, Bayark Lee, everyone.
Yes, I just want to say, when I grow up, I want to be Deborah Ann. Because if I knew all the things that, because I'm only 10 years old, my company, if I knew half of the things that you talked about tonight, I mean, I just had an idea. I was inspired and I just went for it. And, you know, pulling it out of the butt every time, out of the gate. But this has been helpful. And we've been functioning. But I am also educating a community, the Asian community, that are not used to going to the theater. So I have 35 kids in Chinatown that we're doing, they're 8-year-olds to 11, and getting them to the theater and having them sing and dance. I also have a choir of 45 unemployed actors as well as students. And so I'm creating a community as well as putting on shows for shows that they would not be cast in. So we've done Hello Dolly and Carousel and Hello Oklahoma.
It's very parallel to what Deborah Ann's been doing.
Exactly. But
Absolutely. So Bayor, what I would say is continue doing your work, but as you're doing it, be on the lookout for those 1 or 2 human beings who will be able to support you by being your right hand and your left hand. Be on the lookout for those kinds of people, because there's usually 1 or 2 in the group somewhere, so that you feel like supported and you guys can do it together.
yes, because I started my company with Nina, Zoe, and Stephen, but she had family problems and he went off to teach, and so solo.
Mhm.
For now.
Just be on the
solo-
lookout. They're there.
Solo for now. Yeah.
Solo for now, yeah. Well, I just want to be you when I grow up.
I think we all do. Anyone else before we close up? Anybody want to raise a hand or put a question into the chat? Or
Bob, I
just-
hope people will ask some questions. I do have to run to the New York Innovative Theater Foundation judging meeting. So we are coming back with the IT Award soon. But thank you, Bob, for all you're doing. Nice to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me. And you guys, please ask some questions and let other people. Okay, bye, guys.
Bye, Ralph.
Bye,
Bye,
Ralph.
Ralph. So, hello, room. Anybody? If you want to, you can turn on your video and come in and join us. And
And
then
there were 3.
so it's just now. Yeah, at first we lost Francis, then we lost. Okay. So guys, I guess I'm just going to wrap up then. Unless somebody says something, I'm going to thank everybody. I'm going to thank my YouTube viewers out there for being with us as well. And Deborah Ann and Chad, God bless you. I'm so grateful to have you with me tonight. Thank
Yes,
you.
God bless you, Bob. Thank you for calling us. We
Deborah
appreciate
Ann, it
you.
was so lovely here to meet you virtually.
Yes.
And listen, please keep in touch, please.
Absolutely. I'm going to reach out to you, Deb. Like, Chad, I need some help.
100%. I'm here for you. I am here for you. And thank you as
Right.
always, Bob. Anything I can do and really appreciate it. And thank you all that tuned in tonight as well.